Seeing as this is my first YouTube video, let's start with an introduction. My name is Gabriella. You may call me Gabby, but I will not make it my channel name due to the rocky history that name has on this website. I am 23, if reliable news source Famous Birthdays is asking, and I was born on March 19th. A birthday I share with Harvey Weinstein and Casey Anthony. So, I'm doing my best to help redeem the day. This is a project I've thought about starting for quite some time now, and I'm calling it Dumbed Down Discussions, a web series where I research topics that I would hyper-fixate on anyway, and in a desperate attempt to retain said information, I'm gonna do my best to describe it to you in a clear format. Capiche? I'm a person who was diagnosed with ADHD after I'd already been through schooling, and I think due to my brain's past troubles with education, I fell out of love with learning, and damn it if I don't love flexing knowledge that I've acquired. And I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of people like knowing things, but they don't like being bored or confused. And a lot of things are written by experts, which is so cool. Shout out to the experts, you guys do such important work. But your work is a little confusing to the non-experts, so I'm going to try to bridge the gap with this series. And if you at home think of anything you find confusing and you're suspicious that everyone else is just too embarrassed to speak up, I would love a few suggestions. Now that I've explained myself, on to our first topic. What makes music good? Have you ever listened to an album that felt like a balm was applied to your open wounds? It cured every ache and pain you've ever experienced. It single-handedly restored balance to every living creature on Earth. And some critic had the nerve to call it underwhelming. Yeah, okay. You're not alone and you deserve compensation. So why does this happen? How could they do this? Why do some people think a song is revolutionary while others think it's pure sewage? Well, I have some answers for you. And before we begin, a disclaimer. I cannot play an instrument unless you count a Bluetooth speaker as an instrument. I find Rascal Flatts' rendition of Life is a Highway, immortalized on the Cars soundtrack, to be one of the most incredible pieces of music I have ever consumed. Do with this information what you will, but all this to say, I am not Anthony Fantano, and I am unqualified to talk about this. But that's the whole point of this series, haha. So, in the words of a music legend, let's go, girls. Forgive me, Father, for the words I'm about to say. They will make me sound like a philosophical asshole with an unlit cigarette and a knack for playing devil's advocate. But what is good, exactly? Because I do need to establish that if I'm going to be clarifying anything. After reading a few articles and checking in with the musical besties, there are some overarching themes. Critics, songwriters, and audiences all seem to have a few boxes they want checked when they ride the beat all the way to Funky Town. So let's start with 5 of those. Connection. Do you understand what the musician is communicating? Does it speak to you emotionally? If an artist put out a song in the year 2021 talking about how much they wanted an iPhone 6, I don't know how much we'd all be vibing with it. That's why every teenage girl collectively shit their pants when One Direction started their first song ever with You're Insecure. We were all like,
How does he know that? Oh my god, he's so good at that.
Reaction. Does it force a response from the listener? Dancing, tapping along, playing air guitar, sobbing uncontrollably in the middle of the mall to a degree where not even kiosk workers will approach you. If it pulls anything like that out of you, it means it's got your undivided attention. Memorable. Does it glue onto your subconscious? Even if you can't remember the name, the artist, the year, and so on. If someone puts it on, do you suddenly enter an alternate reality where you are now that piece's biggest fan? Well crafted. The rhyme scheme is doing her part. The structure keeps the listener engaged. It doesn't sound like a 4th grade recorder recital. Our parents really deserve compensation for going to those. Timeless. Will this or some part of this be relatable forever? I'm sure there were many songs about churning butter that never made the cut to modern day, but with Stacy's mom, there will always be a horny teenage boy who wants to get with a hot MILF. Now, you might be seeing one thing in common with all of these prompts. They're pretty opinion-based. If you asked 10 people to give you a song they felt most connected to emotionally, you'd get 10 different songs. Same with memorable, even well-crafted. Music is pretty up in the air. Of course, there are technical aspects that a more seasoned listener can hear that the average person cannot. But if that novice can't hear those aspects, then it kind of doesn't matter that they exist when it comes to forming their opinion on the song. Like, yeah, it's cool that you can hear an ancient flute at timestamp 234, but most people won't hear that or care. And if we're being honest, those details aren't what draw you to a song. They serve to enhance it. Just look at Bohemian Rhapsody as the blueprint for music subjectivity. That song went from the critic's punching bag to a cultural phenomenon. The first few notes still trigger an out-of-body experience on any road trip. All of these words just to say that good, in this case, is talking about good to you. And to explain why you like the music you like, let's first talk about how your brain listens to music. Musical activity seems to spark up pretty much every region of the brain and nearly every subsystem. Different aspects of the music are handled by different areas of the brain, and as much as we'd love for each region to have its one distinct job, it seems like a lot of the work is just distributed throughout, and every nook and cranny tries its best to interpret what the hell is going on at any given moment. Remembering lyrics, tapping along, hearing a song for the first time versus listening to a song you know well, all of these employ different systems of the brain. Like listening to a new song actually takes less brain power than an Old Faithful. And this is why a song always feels fuller the more you listen to it. There's more emotion being processed because of the memories tied to it. Think of it like a backpack. When you first get it, it's pretty light and doesn't have a lot of valuables in it. But once you put it to use, it adds quite a few pounds of important information and supplies. Oh, and useless supplies, like your math textbook. This is an anti-math zone. I'm on YouTube. Do you think I like math? Please. And that emotion you feel when you listen to a piece seems like a constant of song critique. So how does your brain dictate the emotion of a sound? And a lot of it is experience. We associate car horns with danger and attention because if you've ever heard a car honk, it usually isn't being used to wish you a happy graduation. But we're also somewhat wired to feel certain ways about certain sounds from a survival standpoint. And you know us humans, such apex predators. Quick, loud sounds are usually understood by any species as something to be alerted by. A nearby branch snapping, thunder, your mother's footsteps after a second wake-up warning. Whereas smooth, even noises are more calming. The waves crashing in the distance, the light breeze of the forest, Casey Musgrave singing Slow Burn. It's the common sense difference between a dog's bark and a cat's purr and what you should be taking away from those noises. Another aspect of manipulating your emotions comes from defying patterns that your brain is a little bit too comfortable with. Most brains would rather listen to any genre of music to avoid do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do for 3.5 minutes straight. It wants a rhythm that adds a little chutzpah, that shifts from safe and predictable to new and surprising. Musical emotion is pretty much a product of organized sound with a constant zesty switch. And this organized disorganization actually causes mood improvement, so I guess any song kind of helps with making you feel like the main character. Your brain embarks on a sort of quest with the song. The starting point is where it synchronizes your brain waves with the beat of the music, doing its best to predict the next beat. As it hears more of the song, it updates its prediction, and your brain gets a little hit of satisfaction when it's proven right. It's even delighted when there's a switch up, because it's playing a sort of game with the music and trying to keep up. Aw, our brains are playing fetch, how sweet. So that's how we listen to and enjoy music. But why do we like specific music more than others? Why do some of us like dubstep while others use deodorant? And we've got a few factors here, but let's go from the top. Well, it all starts in the womb. That fetus is Big Brother. It hears all, including music. Studies have actually shown that a year after birth, children show a preference for songs that they've heard in utero. And across cultures, usually by age 2, they're more into the music typical to their location. These little seeds of musical preference are planted and they influence but don't fully determine. And looking past songs that they were pre-exposed to, babies typically begin by liking songs that are easy to follow. The ABCs, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Row Your Boat, because they don't have the motor skills to focus on too many aspects at once. It can quickly become sensory overload, not knowing which part deserves their attention. Looks like babies can't handle Beethoven, so checkmate infants. Then time passes and they get bored of the easy stuff. They go from wanting a candle to a firework. Now their brains love distraction because otherwise it won't hold their attention without the constant shift of the beat. If a song gets too repetitive, they're going to check out and look for something that'll offer more brain stimulation, like, throwing a glass bottle. Fast forward to puberty, the teenage years, a time for some awkward conversations and interesting fashion choices that you will certainly never regret. These years bring a lot more to the surface than just acne. It's a large turning point for music preferences and developing a genuine interest in music overall. During our teenage angst, we're discovering more about the world and ourselves. We start to ponder our identity and hopefully aim to seek out more than what we were taught just by our upbringings. In our teens, our brains are lubed up and ready for knowledge. Childhood and adolescence is a time of developing new connections within your brain, making it pretty important when deciding any personal preferences. During your youth, your brain is reorganizing and reformatting data at all times, as opposed to your adult years where it starts just trashing connections that it deems unnecessary instead of creating a ton of new ones. One connection that we make as teenagers, specifically in Western cultures, is the social aspect and consequences of music taste. What are your older cousins listening to? What do the lame old people listen to? What does that girl with the septum piercing listen to? In mirroring other people's listening habits, we're forming a bond with those that we want to be more like, giving ourselves something in common with them. There's this undeniable aspect of history when it comes to music being a tool for bonding. Most events across cultures and time periods involve music. The act of singing or dancing or even just listening along and involving the community in something familiar that provokes similar feelings in everyone. The desire for group experience is especially potent in the teenage developing brain, where there is no shortage of insecurity and the desperation to be understood. And even as adults, nostalgia from this era is a driving force of music taste. Pieces that feel like our song. You wonder why oldies grow up and they're like, "This noise is nothing like what I used to listen to." Because they want it back. I mean, a lot of Alzheimer's patients still remember how to sing songs from when they were 14. These times of self-discovery and high concentration of emotion that tag those memories as important. And I, for one, kind of think it sucks that my brain has tagged the song that played in a public bathroom where I got my first period as important, while I couldn't identify Nebraska on a map if my life depended on it. Another big factor in music appreciation is also the complexity of a piece of music. While the words complex and simple are totally subjective, we tend to find what we believe to be too simple or too complex pieces to be bad. This is true in most art forms. We don't like too easy, we don't like too hard. Very much Goldilocks energy. Your brain thinks too simple is predictable and boring. Think Baby Shark. The switching up of the shark family members and pauses between verses is cute for the kids and a nightmare for the rest of us. Your brain thinks too complex is too many possibilities with too many new structures. Many listeners want to tap out early because they don't think it's worth the effort to try to like it. Sure, a lot of us can remember a time where we believed the hype and came around to a piece, but we can also remember the times when we didn't. Each genre has its own complexities and simplicities. The more of that genre we listen to, the more we become subconsciously aware of the patterns. Like when you're not familiar with jazz, your brain isn't good at syncing up with the beat and knowing what's going on. And listening quickly becomes frustrating and really hard to appreciate instead of those satisfactory feelings. This is why you tend to have a favorite genre. You've subconsciously put a lot of time into learning the ins and outs, making it more satisfying to listen to, giving you those little dopamine hits and going on to enjoy more complex songs within that grouping. That exposure is what leads to preferences, and everyone has a different level of adventurousness when it comes to how much music they're willing to expose themselves to, and how many new connections their brain is able to form. And this is always going to be different depending on the individual. All of this that I've been flapping my gums about can be defined by two words. Personal experiences. Connection, reaction, complexity, timelessness, lo-fi, uterus beats, teen angst. All of these things are dictated by you and your history. Music holds a lot of power over our moods, depending on what experiences or memories it may trigger. This power leads to a level of safety involved in our music taste. Sounds dramatic, but hear me out. In a way, you're trusting the musician to lead you to a place emotionally that you're interested in going. Rihanna has become your tour guide of birthday cake and heartbreak. There's a level of vulnerability that comes with letting a piece totally engage your brain. And this vulnerability goes both ways. The artist is getting real about something and inviting you to feel that alongside them. This is why a lot of times it can be hard for people to separate art from artists, because their brain, knowing the context, senses a distinct lack of safety and refuses to let the artist be in charge of their moods when it knows about all the skeletons in their closet. And this can be especially difficult in the age of social media, where we know way too much about each other, and some celebrities feel the need to tell us their stepmother's first hamster's social security number. Music is something we let in even when no one else is around, lending a vulnerability that they might not feel comfortable awarding someone they don't see fit. Not everyone can justify listening to Glee covers when war criminal William Schuster has had a hand in creating them. This can go the opposite way too. Connections can be forged on the basis of agreement with an artist's image or their message. It makes your brain feel a sort of alliance and this desire to like their work. So what makes music good to you? It seems like early exposure and experiences are the base on which our music tastes are built. Like pretty much every other opinion, so a lot of rambling to get to that, but I still think it's cool, okay? So, if your favorite album is the soundtrack of High School Musical 2, wear that with pride and stop denying yourself that basic pleasure just to seem cool. The song I Don't Dance will always reign supreme, and you have nothing to be ashamed of. Today's lesson, like what you like, don't like what you don't like. If a song makes your brain fill up with happy juice or become devastatingly melancholic in a comforting way, just let it happen. Ride the wave. And don't be a dick, let people like things. Thanks for grooving with me all the way to the end of this course. And thank you so much for spending a chunk of your day with me. I really appreciate it. Oh, and the bell doesn't dismiss you. I do. So, class dismissed.